Welcome back, friends and listeners, to your favorite true crime podcast, Truth, Lies, and Alibis, by two 911 dispatchers.
Episode 4.
Paralegal Paramour.
In this episode, Brittany and I talk about how an illicit affair not only destroyed two families, but ended in an altercation that resulted in the murder of one of the people involved.
So this is a really random question, but this whole case for this episode reminds me, the whole time all I could think about was Chicago the musical.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask, what is like the number one lesson that you learned when you watched Chicago the musical?
Get a good lawyer. I mean, really.
That's a really good one. All I could think was, don't have an affair because you will end up murdered or murdering somebody. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with the story, and then later I'll play the piece of the call that's made public. It's very short. It's like seconds. So,
Okay.
On March 11th, 2011, Candy Hall met her lover, Emmett Corrigan, for the last time in a Walgreens parking lot in Meridian, Idaho. Emmett Corrigan was a father of 5 and married to his college sweetheart, Ashley. The two had met in 2003 at a gym while attending Utah State University and had married 6 months after they met. She said in the Dateline episode, Keith was like, "How long did you guys date before you got engaged?" She was like, 2 months. And I was like, oh.
What are you rushing into there, friend?
Been there, done that. Soon after they were married, the couple had twin girls, followed by a son, a daughter, and another little boy. So by the time that Ashley was 30, she had 5 kids. 5 by the time they were both 30. I was like, 5 kids is a lot of kids.
Yeah, as someone who has 4.
Sometimes I'm like, I just want one more. And then I'm like, oh,
that's
no.
Insane. You're insane.
I work in the PICU and a baby cries a lot, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do this. Not all the time. Only when I'm at work.
Can I tell you? I think it's so funny when it was like an announcement that somebody's brother and sister-in-law were having a baby, and everybody was telling them telling the person who told us whose brother and sister-in-law they're not having a baby. They're going to be like an aunt or uncle or whatever, but they're telling them congratulations. And to me, like, if you think about it, that's such a weird thing to give congratulations on. Like, it's one thing, right, if they've been trying for a long time and it was like a struggle, that's one thing to be like, congratulations, like it finally worked out for you. But other than that, it's like, congratulations, you had sex and
it worked.
It worked
for better or worse.
Yeah, so
your sperm works,
sex,
buddy.
the sperm went to the egg and fertilized it. Congratulations. It's such a weird thing for me to think to congratulate people on.
Congratulations, you're never gonna sleep again. So Ashley says that Emmett was charismatic and excited about life and that he was a really great father at first. So Emmett pursued a law degree while Ashley stayed home to raise their children because, as we were discussing before taping, childcare is expensive. He opened his own practice as a bankruptcy lawyer in 2010. This was after 7 years of marriage and 5 children. Ashley says that in 2010, around this time, she began to feel like things between her and Emmett weren't the same. He was working extra long hours, and Ashley was going to most of her prenatal appointments alone because at the time she was pregnant with their 5th child. Her and the kids barely saw Emmett, and she said, and this is a quote, "I started thinking there's got to be another woman or something, and the kids were starting to say, does he live here anymore? He's always at work." Which I was like,
that's rough.
If you're...
for the kids to say.
Yeah. That's why she said, he was a great dad at first.
At first.
When he was around. I just wonder too, like, at first, does she mean like the first kids, and then it just kind of...
Yeah, like, where does that switch go from first to everything else?
Where does it go from, like, he's such a great dad to, does daddy even live here anymore?
Yeah, right.
It's just sad. I guess, like, some of the stuff I was reading online too, most of the stuff comes from, like, Dateline, and then I watched a Crime Watch report on it, and then I used some sources from the internet, which we'll link on our podcast website. Like I said, her and the kids barely saw Emmett, and I guess some of the stuff I read before was like while he was going to school, she lived away from him. So they didn't spend a lot of time together then too. So it feels like most of the time she was raising these kids by herself is what it feels like.
Harkens back to the question of like, when was at first that he was a good father? Like for
that first day,
kids, or
the first time she gave birth,
the process of making a baby. Like
he was a great dad. He like his swimmers were perfect.
He fertilized me. Sorry, I am in a weird mood because I'm so tired.
It's okay. I really like it. He even started like he was changing a lot, and he even started pursuing bodybuilding. So one day Ashley says, she says in the Dateline episode that she was trying to fix her marriage so much, and it seemed like she was like desperate to have that connection with him again, which I understand. Mm-hmm. But she says she was like cleaning out his car to be nice. I think she was snooping, like that,
looking for something.
That's what I would do. And she says she found like a weird pill in his vehicle and like an envelope. So she Googled it, and I think it was some kind of like steroid medication to, help with the bodybuilding and stuff. But she said that the research she did online said some of the side effects were trouble with sexual function. And so she kind of thought, oh, maybe that's why he's not as into me as he used to be, because they weren't having sex a lot either. I mean, they obviously had sex because she was pregnant, but
at least 5 times.
At least 5 times. But it had changed in the last year since he had started his business. Emmett told Ashley he was even going to a bodybuilding competition the night of their anniversary, but that's not where he was.
Oh, that's messed up.
And he just called her and said, hey, happy anniversary. I gotta go. I'll call you later, and never called her back. So not only does he like, oh, I'm going to go to this bodybuilding competition on our anniversary. He didn't ask her to come with him, which, I mean, who's going to babysit 5 kids for them? But still, he could have asked. And 2, he didn't even bother to like call, didn't really care, it seemed like. So
it was just like, oh, by the way, we're not doing anything together. I got plans.
Happy anniversary. I'll call you back. Doesn't call back. What a dick. Yep. So Ashley was right to be concerned because Emmett was having an affair with 40-year-old Candy Hall. Candy was a paralegal at Emmett's law firm, and she had been married to her husband, Rob Hall, for 15 years, and the two had 2 teenage daughters together. Side note, they also met at a gym. They had moved to Meridian from California, and Rob worked IT at a local sheriff's office, so he did like MDC stuff and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. In 2010, she had been fired from the law firm she had been working for and was searching for a new job when her friend introduced her to Emmett because he needed some extra help because he had just started that law firm by himself.
His new one. Mm-hmm.
So he hires her, and according to some of Candy's friends, at the time, Candy and Rob had been having issues in their marriage. She had also claimed that he was abusive and even told a coworker Rob had hit her in the past. So within weeks of getting hired, she was having an affair with Emmett, starting with inappropriate emails and text messages. Coworkers would tell Dateline later that they had tried to hide their affair, but it was pretty obvious that they were having sex in the office.
Classy.
Mm-hmm. Also, like, do your job.
Yeah.
This is work hours, buddy. Like, I just don't understand. I don't get it. Like, why would you risk your whole career just to get some? I mean, I guess if you're like an addict or you just have some issues, like maybe, but I wouldn't do it.
Well, maybe because it was like his practice, right? He probably thought he could do whatever he wanted. Maybe.
Yeah, I think he was the kind of person who thought he could do whatever he wanted anyways. Coworkers and clients knew of the affair, so even clients knew because they made it that obvious.
Ugh, that's so awkward and so unprofessional.
Yeah, like
your clients should not know that.
About your sex life?
About the affair you're having. Like, even if they didn't know it was an affair, right? Like, even if they're like, those people are sleeping together. Like, that's not something that people should be able to pick up on.
Like, she just comes out with her, like, top, like, halfway unbuttoned and her hair all messy. Oh, are you here from your appointment? Or here for your appointment, Mr. Smith? Come on in. He's, like, zipping his pants up. Gross. So Candy would tell the press later that Rob had had an affair as well, like, before this. She said he had been acting differently, working out more, and traveling for work more, which I was like, you do IT for a sheriff's office. Where the fuck are you traveling?
Where are you traveling to? Yeah.
You're going to IT conferences, like, a lot? Because I feel like that's only, like, once a year.
They don't happen. I was going to say, they don't happen too regularly.
Oh, honey, I've got to go to my weekly IT conference. She's like, okay.
All that technology keeps changing.
Every time I turn around. So one night, she says he comes home from a trip late and he confesses everything to her, tells her he's having an affair. She says that the only thing she says is, Rob, please fix it. And the two decide to stay together, which I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to do. But also, she was like hurt that he had an affair. Then they stay together and she's like, I'm going to have an affair now. Like, no.
I'm sure like part of her decision was like, well, he's already had an affair, so what does it matter if I do?
Probably, but
that's such a healthy relationship.
Yeah. How does that fix anything, though?
It doesn't.
I mean, maybe in her mind, too, was kind of like payback, like a big fuck
sure
you.
Part of it. Yeah.
But also, you know what bigger payback would be? Bye, and just going on and being happy by yourself. Like, take all his sheriff's office IT money, which probably isn't a lot, and get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
So Rob would eventually find out about Candy's affair, and he confronted her. One night, Candy says that Emmett texted her, I wish I was with you tonight. That's what she says, the text said. But I think that there was probably, because it says in the beginning of the Dateline episode that when they started their affair, it was like a lot of raunchy text messages. So I think it was probably them sexting each other.
It probably started off with that and then maybe some
Ooh, what would you be doing? Yeah, gross. And then Rob went through her messages and called Emmett to ask him why he was texting his wife late at night, which I was like, that's a valid question. But also, who the fuck are you to ask that question when you were going on so many IT vacations? Okay. According to Candy, Rob handed the phone back to her and said something like, you win, he's young and successful, and he makes lots of money, like basically saying, like, I'm not going to fight for you, which maybe he was just like, oh, thank God, I can leave now.
Okay, well, okay, now it's not my fault. I tried, and now she had the affair, so now it's her fault.
Yeah, now I can go back to sleeping with all my IT people, okay? That's what he's calling it. According to coworkers, though, Rob would call her at work after this and ask why she was with him, and he would call her names like a whore and all these other things, which I'm like,
nice.
I'm very confused. This whole relationship sounds very toxic, like very, very toxic. She's just like, oh, please stay with me, fix this, but then I'm going to go fuck my boss who's 10 years younger than me, and then I'm going to be like her husband's like, oh, he can have you, but I'm going to call you at work and call you a whore.
It's that pride, probably, right? That got to him, the, like, hurt pride.
Yeah, because he's younger.
And he's sitting and thinking about it and just, like, working himself up about how angry he is. So he calls and he's like, how dare you do this and blah, blah, blah. Even though he's the one that had the affair.
He's like, only I can have an affair around here.
Innocent in this situation at all. She's the whore. But I'm not, even though I also slept around.
Because I'm a man.
What's that logic?
On March 11th, 2011, Ashley woke up determined to fix her marriage. Again, this whole time, she feels like what she's doing isn't good enough. She wants to fix her marriage. She loves Emmett. And honestly, all this stuff that I like saw and read, and like I could go and look through her blog if I really wanted to. I don't really have time. But like, I can't figure out, like, what did you love so much about him?
Well, we don't know that, right? Like, we could ask that of a lot of people about their relationships, but I think that's the tricky thing about emotions is that a lot of people don't know why. And so they end up in relationships that aren't fair to them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because they have feelings for that other person. Who are we to say?
So she wakes up, she decides, I'm going to fix my marriage today. I'm going to work even harder than I did all the other days I've been working. Yeah.
I take care of 5 kids and I do everything around the house, but I'm going to work harder.
So that he'll love me.
No.
Yeah. I just want to hug her and tell her, like, you deserve so much better.
Right.
So she goes out, she buys groceries to make a fancy dinner. She, like, gets the house clean. She tries to have everything perfect for her when he comes home. Like, gets the kids all cleaned up and everything. Emmett comes home late again. Dinner's cold, kids are tired, and Ashley's feeling hopeless. So at some point, after months of suspicion, Ashley decides to confront him, and she reached out to a family member because she was struggling. And although she was going to counseling, he was refusing to go with her. He wouldn't go to couples counseling, but she was doing all the work. And she was like complaining and basically telling the therapist that she felt like something was wrong with her.
Yeah.
You know? So Emmett's upset with her because she shared details about their marriage with other people because, you know, he's a narcissist. So at least this is my thought on him. Maybe he's not a narcissist, but he has some narcissistic traits. That's it. I think he was just worried about how everyone else viewed him, and he didn't care about anything else. And he was more mad that she shared that he wasn't the man that he was pretending to be to everyone else.
Right. His projected image, like he wasn't in control of how that person saw him because it came from her opinion and not what he had curated.
Yes. So he didn't want family to know. And so he like yells at her. He's calling her names. He threatens to beat her family up, says something like, I could beat you up, I could kill you all, like in a complete rage.
Nice.
And in the Dateline interview, Ashley tells Keith that she grabs his face and says, I love you. I'm not going anywhere. Tell me what's wrong. And I was like, don't do that.
This poor woman.
I was like,
she's trying so hard for somebody who's not worth it.
Yeah, who's not trying for her. And also, like, don't say I'm not going anywhere, because think about those 5 kids. Like, I understand it. I 100% understand it. I know what it feels like to feel like you cannot leave. I know. She stays home with the kids. She does all the things. She doesn't have a job. So I don't know if she felt trapped. But another little backstory, which I forgot to mention, is they're both Mormon. So
that was it. That's her option, is to fix it.
Yeah.
She doesn't have any other option, really.
Yes. So I think back then, especially, she thought, oh, divorce is not an option.
And from my experience of not somebody who is of the Mormon faith, but from my experience talking to people that have come from the Mormon faith, is that that's probably why she blamed herself, is because most of the time it is the woman's fault, even if it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And 100% it wasn't her fault.
No, of course not. Infidelity is never the partner's fault. It's the person that goes and...
Thank you. I was going to go on this rant. Let's jump on this box. And what do you say every time?
My soapbox.
Your soapbox. Let's jump on it and say, if somebody cheats on you, that does not mean there is something wrong with you. That means there is something very wrong with them.
Preach.
I put it in my notes because I wanted people out there to know, like, because when I was cheated on by my ex-husband, I thought I was ugly. I thought I was disgusting. I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I wasn't lovable. And it took me a long ass time to realize there's fucking nothing wrong with, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but it was not my fault that he couldn't keep it in his pants.
Right. Yeah, it's difficult when that person that is supposed to care about you essentially, like, chooses somebody else instead of you. Like, that's the feeling, right? I mean, we've all been there. Like, it's not a secret. Like, I'm not sharing some giant bomb that, like, I've also been cheated on. Like, humans are broken. Like, it's shit that happens. And so, yeah, like, it took me a really long time to figure out that their actions was not a reflection of my own worth.
Yes.
Your worth isn't determined by the value that others put in you.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good thing for everyone to know.
It's one of my favorite quotes. And I've mentioned it 100 years ago when we did the episode 0, when we talked about ourselves and, like, introduced ourselves. But I was a huge Supernatural fan. And as part of that, I would go to the conventions. Some of the actresses there, like, they would have their own panels and they would take questions from the audiences and stuff like that. And that was something I took away from a panel with Brianna Buckmaster and Kim Rhodes, who are 2 kick-ass bomb ladies. Like, they make you feel good about yourself because of how much they believe in themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I have a video. It was from, like, I have to pull it up. Let me pull it up. June 10th, 2017 was their panel. And somebody had asked them, like, what was a piece of advice or a realization that, like, really changed it. And Brianna said that. Brianna said that your worth is not dependent on the value that other people put in you. And that was exactly what I needed to hear on June 10th of 2017.
And you still have it, so you can go back and listen to it. That's really cool.
Enough of that tangent. Sorry.
I wanted to go into that tangent. I had it in my notes. Ashley's, like, gorgeous, too. I mean, you saw the picture that was right after she had a baby. And she's, like, perfect. She's, like, so smiley and, like, bubbly and blonde. Like, after having 5 kids, she's super fit. I was like, Dang. You know how sometimes too, like, this is another thing, like, and I only say this because it doesn't matter what you look like, really, but I only say this because you can be the prettiest person ever. You can be drop dead gorgeous, like on magazines, whatever. And some man or woman who just doesn't value themselves, really, because that's the real problem, is they are seeking for something that they're lacking. They don't think about other people's feelings in it. They just seek what they need in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Can take you for granted and cheat on you. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter if you're an amazing person. It doesn't matter if you pick a wounded person and you don't know that they are wounded that way and they betray you that way. That's not your fault. That's them. Yeah, and absolutely. Shame on them for making promises they couldn't keep. Okay, now we can.
Okay, we'll step off and we'll scoot the soapbox away.
For now.
For now. It's still within reach. We might need it again.
Good, I think you might. So, after all this, he agrees to talk to the family member on the phone. Ashley could hear their conversation because he goes into their room and the baby monitor is on. Ooh. He's telling this person things about Ashley that just isn't true, saying like she's having an affair and that she says he's a horrible father and all of these things because it's all her fault. But that's what I said. I said, maybe she is saying you're a horrible father.
I mean, the father thing's not too much of a stretch.
Your kid is literally asking if you still live there. So yeah. After the conversation, he comes out of the room and Ashley turns off the monitor real quick and asks him how'd it go. And he says, good. He thinks you're just as crazy as I do. So putting all the blame on her. So in this moment, like,
wow, that's like such a like
a dick move, like, bro. And like putting it all on you.
Everything you're feeling isn't valid and you're wrong and like what's happening isn't what's happening and I'm right and you're making all this up. Like, okay.
And it's all your fault and you're just crazy. Yeah. This woman who he married, who had 5 of his kids, because by now, this night, the baby was born, right? The baby was born like, I want to say 5 or 6 weeks before what happens, which I'll get to. I just don't want to give anything away yet.
I imagine murder.
This is a murder podcast, basically. So, so he says he thinks you're just as crazy as I do. Ashley asks if she can talk to him because she was supposed to be able to talk to him too, but he already hung up. And Emmett says, I don't care what you do. You're not going to use my phone. I'm like, does she have a phone? Because if you're leaving your wife at home with 5 kids with no phone, like, 1, fuck you. And 2, you'll learn later, like, he makes enough money to be able to pay for it. So if she didn't have a phone, I couldn't figure out. I'm sure she probably did. But if she didn't have a phone, that's another form of control. So it sounds to me like she's in at least an emotionally abusive relationship. Probably financially abusive in some ways too, because she doesn't have a job.
She's a stay-at-home mom, right?
And so who knows what kind of like control he's trying to get over her. And she's just like a kind person. And I don't know if maybe she's like embarrassed or she just doesn't want to speak ill of him because he's no longer alive. I think there was more going on there than she wants to talk about, at least at that time. And maybe it's because of the steroids he started to take and he just got worse. Like,
that's a good point. Yeah. And it could be even stuff that even now that like she hasn't realized the extent of it, right? Like we've kind of talked about that before too, where they still love that person. So they don't understand that it's that kind of control and manipulation that's happening to them.
Well, and maybe also like she doesn't want to say anything mean about her kid's dad because they didn't really get to know him. He then says he has to go to Walgreens and that was the last time Ashley would ever see her husband alive. Across town, Candy says that Rob was packing up to leave that night. According to her stories, she was begging Rob to stay and the two were arguing about their marriage. She says at this time, she realized she needed to go to Walgreens for something. I think it was for medication. She's like, I have to go to Walgreens. I'm going to go through the drive-thru. I'll be back soon. This is her story. So just take it with a grain of salt because she is not a trustworthy person at all. And she bothers the crap out of me. So Candy would tell investigators that on her way to Walgreens, Emmett called her and asked her what she was doing. When she said she was going to Walgreens, supposedly he said something like, I was just there. I'll meet you there. I'll turn around to go meet her.
Is like Walgreens the place to be? Like, do they not have anything else?
Well, it's like nighttime and
maybe it's the only place that's open 24 hours.
Who knows? Also, like, I think that was probably just their meetup spot because...
Yeah, that seems more likely.
Like, who's going to go to Walgreens looking for their spouse having an affair? You know what I mean? I am now. I'm going to be checking Walgreens. I'm just kidding. When Candy arrives, she goes through the drive-thru, she says, and then she parks and gets in Emmett's car, and the two go to get gas nearby. While at the gas station, Emmett gets a bag out of the back of his vehicle and takes out some prescription bottles and takes a pill. And Candy says, "What's that? What are you taking?" And he says, and this is a quote, "If you don't want to grow a penis, don't take these."
So they were like testosterone pills?
I think it was probably like Viagra.
No.
Because he's taking all those steroids, which, you know, makes it hard for you to get it up. And then he's going to go sleep with her. He does. So this is what happens. They get back in the truck and then they drive somewhere and have sex in his car. And the Dateline quote made me laugh because he goes, "They went to a secluded area and had sex under a streetlight." And I was like, how is that a secluded area?
Just that show light right on top of you, just cascading down.
It's like a spotlight. Yeah. So they have sex, which like also how do 30 and 40-year-olds have sex in the back of a truck? It was a truck with like a back seat, and it's not a very big back seat.
Well, they're both physically fit, right?
I mean, I guess that's true, but there's not a lot of space.
I'm in my 30s, and I think I'd be okay.
I probably would be too, but I don't think I'd want to do it. I'd be like, can we just go home?
Well, they can't go anywhere else. They can't go home. They've both got spouses in their houses.
Like, I have a Dodge Journey, so it's different. Like, you could just lay the seats down. But, like, in the back of a truck where it's, like, this tiny little... It was, like, one of those trucks.
Those bucket seats.
Anyway, they proceed to have intercourse. And and then, while they're laying there afterwards, to which I say, where were they laying? Because there's not a lot of space. Again, I say, where's the space? How are we laying in the back of the car? While they're laying in the back of the car, Candy gets a phone call from her daughter, who's coming home from a date, and says she saw her vehicle at Walgreens. And she's like, "What are you doing at Walgreens?" Because it's late at night.
Like, oh, I'm actually not there anymore. I'm under a streetlight.
In a secluded area under a streetlight. She calls her mom and tells her that, and then she also tells her, "I called Dad too." So she called her dad and said, "Mom's at Walgreens.
Mom's
like, I
car.
see her parked at Walgreens." So Rob had gone to Walgreens to find Candy, and he's seen on security footage searching for her throughout the store because he's like, where the fuck is my wife? And then Rob then calls her and says, "Are you with Emmett?" And then Candy tells him the truth and says that Emmett takes her phone and says, and this is a quote, "What's up, Chief?" And then tells Rob to wait for them at Walgreens.
What an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, what?
"What's up, Chief? I just got done dicking your wife."
In the back of my truck. Yeah. That's why I asked, what the fuck did Ashley see in him? Like, and no offense. I mean, I don't like to pick on people for their looks, but like, he just looks like a douchebag. Like, it
doesn't matter what he looks like he is.
Yeah, he says, "What's up, Chief?" Then he tells Rob to wait for them at Walgreens. They'll be there in a minute. And Candy says that she tells Emmett, and this is a quote, "We're not going to do this." And Emmett basically says, "Yeah, we are." It's like he's like, "Meet me on the playground after school. We're going to fight, bruh.
Catch me outside."
So Rob's then seen on video footage moving his vehicle into a parking lot. And when Candy and Emmett arrive, Rob walks over to them. And this is all, according to Candy, this is all her story. Okay?
Okay.
She says, Rob asks Emmett, "What are you doing out with my wife at 10 o'clock at night?" Valid question, because it's like 10 o'clock at night.
What do you think, my dude?
"They were praying. That's all." We were playing Yahtzee.
We were geocaching.
Okay. And then Emmett responds by telling Rob that Candy doesn't want to be with him anymore. And he says something like, and this is a quote, "I mean, really, Rob, what did you make last year? Maybe 40,000? Candy, what did we make last week? 27,000? Last week, Rob, that's what I make in 1 week. You don't make anything." Yeah.
I don't like him.
"What's up, Chief? I made $27,000 last week."
What's up, chief? I can sleep with whoever I want. I'm so great. I take steroids to get buff and have a lot of money. Too bad my personality's lacking.
Rob then brings up Emmett's kids and wife, and he tells Emmett, what about your kids and your wife? She just had a baby. Which I'm like, yeah, Rob.
Valid.
Yeah. Preach, brother, preach. Like,
you cheated on your wife.
All three of you are junky humans.
Yeah.
But, like, still. Because you know how I feel about cheating. You know how I feel about cheating. Yeah. Candy says at this time, she tells the two men that it was enough. She's like, that's enough. Ah. And that it was time to leave. She tells Emmett to get in his car and tells Rob that they need to leave. She turns to get in her vehicle when she says she hears 4 gunshots. When she turns, she sees Rob on the ground covered in blood and Emmett on the ground as well. She runs to Emmett's side and holds him as he takes his last breath. She kisses him on the cheek, and then it turns out Emmett had been shot in the heart and in the head. She says her husband's covered in blood as well because he had like a bullet skimmed his head. I have to say that watching her tell this story on Dateline, it doesn't seem like she has like a ton of emotion at all about the incident. It just kind of seems like from the vibes I got from her, I think she was proud that 2 men were fighting over her. Yeah. And she's just like bragging that she's having this affair with this younger 10-year younger man who's really good looking. To which I'm like, he's your fucking boss, who is married, by the way, with 5 kids. 5 kids. And your husband kills this person, leaves those 5 kids without a dad.
Yeah. Well, seems like they didn't have much of a dad to begin with, but...
Well, that's true. Yes. Yeah, that's true. But it still made me uncomfortable just the way she talked. I was like, you are just a shitty human. So, at home with her 5 kids, Ashley's awake and worried about her marriage, wondering where her husband is. At 1 a.m, when police come for the next of kin notification, she's still awake. They tell her that Emmett is dead and he was killed by his lover's husband. At this time, Ashley realizes that all of her suspicions are real and that he was cheating on her with Candy. A woman who worked in her office, a woman she says she wasn't really concerned about because she was 10 years older and that she thought they had a friendship relationship because she had come in a couple times and Candy would be wearing like short skirts and like knee-high boots and like slutting it up, right? And...
Hey, well, maybe she just thought she looked cute. Let's not shame people for clothing. She's a terrible human because of what she did, not because of what she wore.
Usually, now I feel like I have to explain myself. Usually places have like uniform, a dress code. Thank you. A dress code. You, as well as anybody, knows that I like to slut it up as much as the next person, okay? Anyway, she was worried because she was not in dress code appropriate clothing, and she asked Emmett about it, and Emmett said that she was more of like a mother to him. Barf.
Ew. Don't say that when you're sleeping with her.
She's like my mom. No, friend.
That's a real Oedipus complex you got there, my dude.
That's a whole nother podcast. Candy had also bought Ashley presents for the baby when she was pregnant while she was sleeping with her husband. And then she told Keith Morrison on Dateline it was the ultimate humiliation and she felt as if she went through a divorce and a death all in the same second. She says it was like all of her concerns were just proven true, and the fact that the marriage she was fighting for wasn't even something she could fight for anymore was heartbreaking.
Well, that's tough too, because especially like at the beginning you said people in the office knew that they were having an affair, clients knew they were having an affair. Ashley
Everybody knew
had
but her.
Friends that had told her like, hey, we think he's sleeping. So it's much more than like her suspicions, right? At that point, she doesn't want to believe it because she doesn't want that marriage to fall apart. She wants it to work. Mm-hmm. So it's that definitive proof in front of you of like something you can't deny anymore.
I know we already kind of talked about this, but like, what are you fighting for? Like, what are you getting in return?
Right, and I agree with you, but we've also talked about what it looks like on the inside of a relationship like that. Like,
I know. I just keep coming back to that question. I'm like, what are you fighting for, though? Like,
yeah, like, we want you to realize you deserve better.
Yes, and like, also, like, what you're fighting for, you could have, like, it's not like, it doesn't sound like there's any good left, right?
Right.
So, at that point, like, yeah, you're fighting for it, but you're fighting for what? To get left on your anniversary so he can go to a bodybuilding competition, so you can raise 5 kids by yourself. Like, so you, I mean,
so
he's
he can
not being
control your money, and yeah,
he's not emotionally supportive of her, obviously, because he's like, you're fucking crazy. And he's not having sex with her. Like, there's no kind of intimacy there anymore. And it's just sad. I'm just sad for her, you know, because she didn't deserve to be treated that way. Meanwhile, Rob's rushed to the hospital and Candy was taken into custody to ask questions. So,
does she see that Rob has the gun? Like, when she hears the 4 gunshots, turns around.
So it wasn't very clear, and I think that has to do with her because she doesn't want... So later on, and I'm going to read this in my notes later, but later on she comes to support her husband. Like, she doesn't want him to get in trouble. When she originally called...
because her new boy is dead, so...
Yeah, she needs someone to take care of her or whatever. I don't know. But she originally tells them, like, she heard 3 shots or something like that. Then she says it's 4. I don't know. But she changes her story quite a few times. So I'm going to play a portion of the 911 call, the only portion that is available, because Candy calls 911, but it's like, really, you don't know why she's calling. Like, I'll play it for you.
So that's interesting. So her account is that she heard 4 gunshots, turned around, and ran to Emmett.
Yes.
But her 911 call is her yelling for her husband.
Yeah. And also, like obviously they got people to them, but I wish they would just release the entire call.
Yeah.
I've only taken a couple calls that emotional.
Yeah.
One I
for sure.
took the other day, and I actually had to call Kylie to, like, cry about it because you were at D&T. And it was like a DV, and all I could hear was screaming children at the beginning of the call. And I could just hear them throughout the call. And by the end of the call, I kid you not, felt like I was going to throw up, and I started crying and, like, hung up and had to walk out of the room and cry, which is just a reminder to please take care of yourself. If you are a dispatcher or anybody, but especially if you have a high stress job, please take care of yourself. But I've only taken so many calls where it's been, like, that emotional. She was like, like,
just screaming.
Yeah. And you're like, what the fuck is happening? Because you're not getting anything if all she's saying is Robert, Robert, Robert. Like,
no. Well, and the thing, specifically with women's voices, when they get that high pitch and shrieky, like, you have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah.
So, and that's the tough thing, is, like, we joke about it, right? Because we have to, but you have to get your caller to calm down so you have any idea what kind of response you need. Are they freaking out because somebody just had a heart attack and they think they're dead? Are they freaking out because they just got shot? 2 very different response.
Yep. Because you don't know it's your job to know what to tell your officers to expect too, which is another added pressure.
I mean, it's really hard to, I've had those calls too. It's really hard to just be like, try and, like, get them to take a deep breath and tell you what's going on. And it's a lot of times you might catch in between that breath of, like, he just got shot, and you're like, oh, okay, I can work with that. you know, like,
and it's also hard in those situations too, sometimes, to stay calm, like, because the frustration, like, you kind of have to because it's your job. But I'm just saying, like, sometimes it's hard because the frustration of not being able to know what to do for them and then not being able to calm them down can sometimes lead to people, like, I've seen people be like, stop yelling. And that does not help. I just want to throw that out there.
I understand where you're coming from, because, like, you get that too when people are freaking out and they're like, just send help, just get here. And you're like, well, they're coming, they have to drive. Like, yeah, I promise, I've said it 5 times already, they're on their way. You know, I've had those moments, but
I don't know what I'd do if all I could hear was her saying, Robert, Robert, Robert. I'd probably put it in as a DV or something, just to get it toned, you know?
Just to get people en route.
Yeah. Anyway, Robert Hall is charged with premeditated first-degree murder. Prosecutor Jason Spillman says, this is the case of a man hunting down his wife's paramour and waiting for 17 minutes to kill him. I was like, paramour, huh? Okay. Fancy.
Yeah.
The prosecutors thought that Emmett had been shot twice and that the 3rd shot fired was an attempted suicide by Robert Hall. That's what they think the evidence showed, because Robert had gunshot residue on his hands and Emmett didn't have very much gunshot residue on him. Robert showed up with a gun, and it wasn't the gun that he usually carried. It was a gun that Candy had purchased for him. Not only that, but he walked around Walgreens looking for her. Then he waited. Then he talked in the parking lot for 8 minutes to Emmett, waiting for people to clear out, it seems like. Like, it seems like the place, so Walgreens was shutting down and he was waiting for people to leave.
He's like stalling.
Yeah, so there's not as many witnesses, maybe. Robert Hall would tell investigators that he didn't remember what happened. And then his defense would say there was a scuffle and that Emmett had taken his gun and shot him first. And then somehow Robert must have gotten the gun back and executed Emmett.
I see the Chicago connection now. They both reached for the gun.
Yep.
Oh, I see.
He waited, like I said, he waited 8 whole minutes after Emmett got there because he waited for witnesses to leave. Defense experts would say that it was Emmett who first initiated the fight. And if you take it from Candy, it sounds like after Robert was like, go home to your wife, that's when Emmett attacked Robert. But who knows if that's even fucking true. They would say that he had hyper irritability and an explosive temper due to all the medications he was taking, including steroids and amphetamines. And Candy would eventually take the stand as a witness for Rob's defense. And she told the jury that Emmett pushed Rob first and that started the fight. The night it happened, however, she told detectives she hadn't seen or heard the fight begin that night. She would change her story. Yeah. She would change her story many times, and when on the stand, she would say that, this is a quote, things were remembered after talking to her husband. Because the prosecutors, like, didn't...
Well, yeah, of course she remembers something different because your memories change when you have outside influence. Your memories are wrong to begin with.
And when you're trying to get your husband not to go to jail.
Yeah, it's no fault of your own that you may not remember exactly what happened exactly correctly. But if he goes, no, remember, he pushed me first, she's going to be like, oh, right.
Yeah. Okay. She would tell jurors and Rob that she still loved Rob and she was so sorry for cheating on him and that she loved him so much and all these things. While
I don't understand people.
Toxicity all the way around.
The human race is such an alien species. I just don't understand.
While a brokenhearted Ashley watched from the courtroom audience. So the whole time she's like, she literally was like, it was hard for me to watch her sit there and say she loves her husband so much when they took my husband, basically.
Yeah, making him, like, he's not there to add his part into it, so it's all his fault, all of that.
On October 25th, 2012, Rob Hall was found guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The jury didn't feel that they could prove that the murder was premeditated. And I'm like...
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Okay, but he waited 8 minutes.
I mean, that's not proof of premeditation.
I guess that's true.
I guess
it could have escalated.
That's either, like, right? Like, he's talking to this guy who's antagonistic, that we already know who's antagonistic.
Hey there, chief.
And, you know, maybe he is waiting for people to clear out. Maybe he's not trying to make a scene. Maybe it was that 8 minutes in which Candy finally walked away. Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like premeditation to me. I feel like if it was, it may have happened sooner.
Yeah. He'll be eligible for parole just before his 60th birthday in 2028, so only 5 more years left. He still doesn't take full responsibility for the murder. He blames Emmett Corrigan for the murder and calls himself a victim in the entire incident.
Interesting.
He also thinks about his daughters, age 18 and 14 at the time of the incident, because he feels bad because they were left without their dad and then they were left without their mom. Remember how I said that Candy had been fired previously? She would also go on to serve time in prison, 18 months, because she had to plead guilty to grand theft because she embezzled $30,000 from her previous employer.
Wow. That's where she's making all of her money, illegally. I mean, it's one thing to, like, claim that it wasn't premeditated. It's another thing to be like, it's all his fault. Like, he may have attacked you, but you ultimately shot him twice.
Yeah, you murdered him.
Nobody's right here. Like, you can't just be like, it's all his fault. No. You are also to blame.
Also,
there's
like,
no innocent party here.
If he really attacked him and he was in, like, a roid rage, don't you think there would have been proof of that? Like, maybe injuries to him? You know? I don't know. I just have lots of questions, but it doesn't matter. He went to prison. Ashley Corrigan is now Ashley Burke. And after the murder, Ashley started a blog called The Moments We Stand and also founded a nonprofit that helps victims who are dealing with trauma in their lives. She is remarried and she now has 7 kids. She's a motivational speaker and wrote a book about her experience. Jessica's like, what the heck?
That's too many.
Way too many. She lives in Utah with her husband and her children.
Well, I hope that she's happy. I really do. And I honestly mean that. Like, it sounds like that. Well, I hope she's happy. No, like, I legitimately hope that she's happy.
Well, I'm going to say I heard this story a long time ago, and I kind of felt like I related to her a little bit because when I went through my divorce, it was kind of sudden, like unexpected, and it was horrible. Like a horrible crime was connected to it. And when she said she felt like she had gone through a death and a divorce at the same time, I like kind of understood. So I started following her like blog, and I started following her social medias. So I've been following her for a couple years now. And she was married, and then she got divorced, and then she married her husband, who she's with now, and they had 2 more kids, and she looks happy. I mean, it's Instagram, so... But she does look happy. She still does her speaking to try and help people heal through trauma, which, as we've said before, it's crazy amazing how people can go through some crazy ass shit that's awful and make something good out of it. So
yes.
Kudos to her, and hopefully her kids are happy too.
Thank you for listening. Additional information for each case can be found on our website, truthliesandalibis.buzzsprout.com. New episodes will be uploaded every Monday. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Truth Lies and Alibis.